sadly, we live in a world, and just due to the way that human nature is, negative spreads a lot further and faster than positive. I mean, I meet Americans who are afraid to go to the UK because they think they're going to get stabbed, or they think they're going to run into a grooming gang or some terrorist activity or something, right? And I'm there trying to sort of tell them, like, guys, like, the UK is not some, hyper dangerous country. It's okay to travel to London and other cities. The probability but then I know people in the UK. I have British friends who are afraid to step foot in America because all they hear about are mass shootings and out of control police officers just murdering black people willy nilly and this and this and this. And I'm just like, man, it runs in all sorts of directions. You meet Mexicans who are afraid to go to the US, Americans who are afraid to go to Mexico, people here who are afraid to go there. And you're just like, I think it gets worse with social media. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. In one way, people can spread more information and dispel some of the myths, but at the same time, I just feel like now people see everything. If something horrible happens in Cape Town and someone gets a video of it or a photo, it's going to be on my social media feeds tomorrow, right? Whether no matter what country you're in, someone's going to see it and they'll be like, look, this is South Africa, this is what's happening, and millions and millions of people see it. And I always say that normal doesn't go viral. So you're never going to have, oh, look, it was a nice sunny day in Cape Town and people got on well with each other and lots of nice, good deeds were done to each other and everyone was friendly and cordial. That's not news. That's not interesting. But as soon as someone goes out and does something horrible or something psychotic, then everybody knows about it. So we live in this weird world where something can be, I feel like we live in a time where something can simultaneously be true and false. As in, it can be true that this thing did happen and these types of things do happen, but the falsity is it can be made to look as if it's a very common occurrence, whereas actually it's a 1 in a million or 1 in a billion circumstance.
100%. So the people that got robbed 3 days ago, which is very rare in our suburbs, Constantia Bishop's Quarter, so the wealthiest suburbs in South Africa, security and everything. It's one family got robbed this year that I've heard of out of 50,000 to 60,000 families. I'm making up the number in this area. It's nothing. It's nothing really. I mean, I know it's a lot worse an hour from here in other areas, but every day has been a good day other than that for that family. So that is what, if you look at things positively, I had a statistic, which is clearly wrong, that 92% of people are pessimists and 8% are optimists. Okay. And I'm trying to be in that 8%. I mean, by the way, it could be 50-50, but 92-8 sounds about right. And, we die of tooth decay 150 years ago. Now we have dentists to bomb, like nice, white, shiny teeth, etc. It's amazing how I think every day is a better day than the day before for the world. Yes, you've got issues in Israel, Gaza, and whatever, and whatever is going on in the world, and you go, oh my God, it's terrible. Why isn't the Ukraine war over? But most countries are at peace. Most people are actually having a better life this year than last year. There's the 8%. And South Africa is the same.
Yeah. Rob, why do you think it is that what you just said there is, we live in a time where I'd say that what you just said is actually quite controversial. People really like the negativity and the outrage and the fear, and maybe it's always been this way, but I get the sense that so many people now thrive on that. And being someone who's a creator myself, who's a podcaster, someone who does things on social media, makes music and so on, I know darn well that I can frame this podcast in a way to get more views by leaning very, very heavily into all the negative stuff. And we will talk about some of the negative stuff in the
and the title you put on the show too. You could say
I'm very aware. So it's kind of strange being in this world, because you get this understanding of why the media operates the way that it does. But at the same time, it then becomes this kind of cycle and this self-fulfilling prophecy where it's just anger, division, controversy, drama, violence, and everything is framed in that way. And people get very addicted to it, that when you actually try to cover things in a bit of a more balanced way, I found, I don't know if you've experienced this, but, there are people who actually get offended by it, or at a minimum, they just don't want to click because it's not they don't want to click or listen because it's like, no, 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 just give me the stuff that's going to make me angry. Give me the don't tell me that the races are getting on. Tell me about the anti-black racism and the anti-white racism. Let's just talk about that. Tell me about the murders. Tell me about this. Like, I don't want to hear that actually daily life in South Africa is good. And it's the same in the UK. If I put, the UK is falling, why the UK is burning, there's 5 years left for the UK, boom, that'll get lots of clicks, it'll get lots of attention. But if I'm like, actually, you know what? Yeah, there's bad stuff in the UK and there's things to be concerned about, and we can really talk about that. But for the most part, I mean, the UK is not collapsing. It's not like in 5 years, the UK is going to be a pile of dust. Like,
so I'm going to give you three answers to that. I might have forgotten one of the three on the way. So my favorite unknown newsletter and podcast, which gets no views, is the Rational Optimist Society. Go and check these guys out. It's kind of a nerdy, geeky guy and an Irish guy. His accent's quite strong, so sometimes you can't tell what he's talking about. And all they talk about are unbelievably good things that are happening in the world, okay? And I dig it. It's like, this is what small, medium nuclear reactors can deliver. This is the new type of aircraft that's going to save the world. And it's really cool developments, tech, manufacturing, industrial, amazing things that are happening around the world. Their podcasts get no views. I was thinking of stealing their information, putting it to AI, and then having it as my own. Here's some good news for the world. Just nicking the information, because you and I'd get so many more views. So check out the Rational Optimist Society. I love it. I get a weekly newsletter and I read it cover to cover. Second, this friend of mine made a couple of $1 billion. He was the first guy in the world to invent the conference business in the 70s. And he had conferences all over the world. And I asked him, what was the key to success of conferences? He'd do conferences on investing and the politics and transport, whatever, all over the world. He said, my title for every conference, this is something we could learn for podcasts, has to have fear or greed in it. Unless you come to my conference, you're going to lose all your money. Or if you come, you're going to learn the secrets of making $1 billion, And in every title, he'd have fear or greed. And I thought about that. It was genius. It's so simple and so genius. So for our podcast, we should, instead of having scary clickbait, we should have fear or greed, in the title. Now, what is the third thing I was going to tell you? I knew I'd forget something. But it's so true, people thrive on fear and bad news because here's the third thing. When people talk badly behind your back, like, backstabbing. I read an article in The Economist, must have been 8-10 years ago, about gossip. And the article said that if you only say nice things about people, the people to whom you're speaking lose interest and lose trust. So if I could say to you, Zuby, do you know Joe Smith? You go, Joe's a lovely guy, great guy. Conversation's over. But if I say, Zuby, do you know Joe Smith? And you go, I know Joe, he's a great guy, but let me just tell you a little bit of, and you tell me a little bit of goss about him. We're engaging in a conversation. You're sharing information with me. I'm sharing with you. In many cases, you probably don't mean what you're saying, and you don't mean it badly, but it connects people. And this Economist article said it's fascinating. And I tried it out, not because of the article, in London for about 3 months. I said, I'm going to say no bad things about anyone.
It's interesting because, as someone who's, for my own entrepreneurial purposes, has done some study of, human psychology and sales and marketing. I know that it works. Like, I know how to do it, but I have an ethical issue with leaning too hard into it, because then I feel like you just end up feeding the problem and becoming the thing that you set out to oppose. If you ask a lot of people what their problem is with mainstream media, whether it's online or it's newspapers or it's the television, it's that it's so divisive. It makes them feel angry. They focus on all the negative all of the time. And I'm like, that's true, but it's also your own psychology. And that is the thing that people are clicking on. That's the thing people are watching. That's the thing that's driving revenue. But then as myself, as an independent creator, if I then start a podcast or I start a YouTube channel, then I'm like, okay, well, let me just run the exact same playbook. then over the course of time, how am I any better than these same things that I've been, complaining about? And I always try my best to be part of the solution more than much more than part of the problem. And so I think it's not, I don't think it's unethical to like occasionally use tapping into fear or occasionally use tapping into outrage or concern or something. But I think when it becomes the one trick pony where it's like, okay, every single thing I do, I'm going to, put the fire and the red in the thumbnails, and I'm going to have, the faces like, the most extreme.
Here's a good one. Piers Morgan. Ready? Piers Morgan, I've met playing golf, and I got on really well with him. And I kept saying to him, Piers, I'm becoming quite well followed in South Africa. Why don't I come on your show? And he'd say, yeah, well, I like to do stuff that's of interest to America. So South Africa's nowhere. But, he suddenly called me out of the blue and he said, okay, I'm inviting you on my show. I got a message from his people inviting you on my show. And I got really excited. I said to my wife, at last, Piers has invited me. I'm super excited. My wife said, you shouldn't do it. I went, what? She said, look what Piers does. He gets 4 people, 2 on this opinion and 2 on this opinion, doesn't let them speak long enough to make a point, and he gets them all shouting and screaming at each other. Basically, everyone's just clickbait for the Piers Morgan show, okay? And I looked at her, I thought, she's right. I'm being set up. So I sent a video message to Piers, said, Piers, I think you're great, buddy. If you want me one-on-one, I'm available anytime, but I'm not going to be clickbait for you, because I saw the other 3 people on there. The one guy was kind of in my camp. The other 2, I would have wanted to strangle after about 15 minutes. And sure enough, I got a friend of mine on instead of me, Gareth Cliff, who's an important podcaster in South Africa. And he and this, Gareth, yeah. So he announced Roots, yeah, versus Gareth and versus 2 other people. And it ended up being a shouting match. And I ducked the bullet there. Whew.